First of all, I'll start. I'm Chief Alan Banks, Albuquerque Police Department. Standing here with me is Sheriff Dan Houston, Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department. Thank you for being here today. Information today will be limited because the investigation is in its infancy stages. And now we're a little over 24 hours from the incident that occurred yesterday. I'm going to address the basic points, and in the next few days, I will be releasing additional officers' names and additional information as it is confirmed. What I will start off with is I'll tell you our offender yesterday was identified as Christopher Chase, birthday 2/4/78. Christopher Chase, 2/4/78. This is the most current photograph that we have of Christopher Chase. He does have a criminal history ranging from misdemeanor to felony charges, embezzlement, fraud, to traffic violations. Our detectives are still conducting an investigation into his background to determine if there's anything else that we need to be aware of as to what the motive for his actions were yesterday. We do note that he has a tattoo on his body that says "Cop Killer." And again, his motive for yesterday at this point has not been determined. At 11:21 hours, our 911 dispatch received calls from citizens stating that a male subject was dressed in camo, a black mask, and armed with an AK-47 at the intersection of Avenida Cesar Chavez and Broadway. Witnesses stated that this gentleman told them to call the police and that he would be waiting for them. Our officers and a sergeant were dispatched to this location. While en route, our sergeant did ask for our K-9 units, did ask for our tactical units, and did ask if any of our officers had long guns to respond. Chase began shooting as our first officer responded to the scene. As the second officer arrived at that location, Chase begins shooting at him. Our officer exits his vehicle and gets to a place of cover and concealment. Chase then gets into a police vehicle and begins driving north on Broadway. As he's driving north on Broadway, he fires from the vehicle at officers that were at Cole and Broadway. He fires at officers at Central and Broadway, Martin Luther King and Broadway. He then proceeds and continues northbound where he gets to Griegos, goes west on Griegos to Rio Grande, north to Ranchitos, and then back east on 4th Street, and back east to 4th Street. Chase then turns southbound on 4th Street. As he's traveling southbound, he fires at deputies at 4th and Schulte. He continues southbound on 4th Street. He encounters traffic at the intersection of 4th and Montano. He veers into the Phillips 66 gas station where he crashes into a pillar at one of the gas pumps. Our officers are behind them. When he crashes, our officers discharge their firearms at this point. It has not been determined if Chase was struck by any of the officers. OMI will determine the manner of death at this time. Once that scene was secured, Chase was identified by fingerprints, and a residence was determined. It was determined that he lived off of the 800 block of Walter Street Southeast. Our investigators obtained a search warrant for that residence. They went to serve that search warrant on the residence and determined that it appeared to have been booby-trapped at the windows. So they're very meticulous in going inside to determine what type of booby traps were inside that residence. Once they got inside, it was determined that the booby traps were not real, that they were fake. He had what was types of fishing line. He had what appeared to be fake artillery shells with wires coming out of them, and he had the windows boarded up. Again, at this time, we don't know motive, nor do we know reason. As I said before, the investigation is still at its infancy stages. It's still ongoing. We're still trying to gather information. As you might understand, it was we had a lot of scenes to process yesterday. We had a lot of cooperation from many agencies, to include the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department, State Police assisted us as well. This was an ongoing pursuit, and we know during that pursuit, Chase was firing his weapon outside that window. I would ask any citizen that obtained any damage to any property as a result to please contact 242-2677 or 242-COPS. I'd like to thank everyone who has called us, who has sent thoughts and prayers to our officers and to our departments. Our thoughts and prayers go out to our officers and also the Bernalillo County Sheriff's deputy who was injured yesterday. I am very, very proud of the response and professionalism of our entire organization for the response in this senseless tragedy. We will continue to be resilient and to take care of the citizens of Albuquerque. This was a multi-jurisdictional investigation, as I mentioned, to include Bernalillo County Sheriff's, State Police, District Attorney's Office, and the Office of the Medical Investigator. Our independent review officer was on scene yesterday as a result of an officer-involved shooting. I'd like to thank the many agencies, both federal, state, and local, who reached out to us yesterday to offer any type of assistance and resources. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Sheriff Dan Houston for his comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And first, if I could just take a moment to thank the Albuquerque Police Department, our governor, all of our federal law enforcement agencies that we work with, state and local, that have reached out to us in an overwhelming way to offer their assistance and help in this horrific incident, as well as the citizens that we serve, an outpouring that we've had in support of our officers and deputies that were shot yesterday. I also want to thank you for your patience in understanding that we are now just going to release the name of our deputy. We had complications with notifying some of the family in California, as well as it was difficult to give a timeline last night, as I know Chief Banks extended to me that he would on the condition of their officers, because ours was not so clear at the time. I can tell you now at this time that our deputy's name is Robin Hopkins. She's 45 years old. She started on our department in April of 1998. She's a past Marine, and she also serves actively now in the Air Force Guard. What I can tell you is that yesterday, as this incident played out, she was northbound on 4th Street to intercept the offender who was southbound. Just prior to the contact, as the chief said, the offender had the weapon stuck outside the window. The APD Sergeant Lockie, who was in pursuit behind him, observed 4 pillows of smoke appear from the point of the weapon towards our deputy's vehicle. Our deputy's vehicle veered off, came to a stop. She was shot by the offender in her vehicle. Sergeant Lockie discontinued his pursuit of the offender, stopped and rendered aid along with deputy of our department, Deputy Osborne. This also occurred right in front of Fire Station 30 of the Bernalillo County Bernalillo County Fire Department. Fortunately, they were able to get a tourniquet on her leg immediately, and they did a scoop and run with her to the University of New Mexico Hospital. I was there most of the day with many of our command staff, our union people, her squad as she went into surgery during the day yesterday. We left at approximately 6 p.m. and were called back at about 8 last night as she went in for a second surgery. I was able to be down there today. I was with her just before coming here. I had the opportunity to meet with her. She was alert. We communicated her in writing, and she advised me that she feels very blessed, that she will be back to work, which I articulated to her that we would certainly facilitate that. And the last thing that I would like to say is that I told her that there was a tremendous outpouring of the law enforcement community and the citizens, which a big grin came on her face and a thumbs up. She's a very strong officer, and she is in ICU. I think that speaks to itself as to what her condition still is. And so we continue to ask you for her prayers for her and her family. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Before I bring up the mayor, just a couple points I want to bring up. We have not interviewed our officers who were involved in yesterday's incident. More specific, we have not interviewed those who were injured nor those who discharged their firearms. That's why I will not be releasing their names today until after their interviews. I will confirm that we did have 3 officers that did sustain injuries as a result of Chase firing his weapon at him. Last night, it was determined that one of our officers actually had a hole through his pants, and he had a fragment from a projectile lodged into his skin. All officers' injuries are to the lower extremities. One officer was released from the hospital yesterday. One officer remains in the hospital. The other was not taken to the hospital, but was checked out late last night. Again, our thoughts and prayers with each and every one of the officers, their families, our officers. Our thoughts and prayers with the deputies and the members of the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office. This time, I'd like Mayor Richard Berry to come up and give a few remarks.
I just want to thank both the Albuquerque Police Department and the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office for the great work that they did yesterday under horrific circumstances, keeping citizens safe and doing their job. I think it's a stark reminder yesterday of the dangers that the men and women in public safety face every day. When they get up in the morning like they got up yesterday, it's a day like any other day that ends in a day like no other day. And they stepped up to the challenge. They performed with valor. They're heroes. And the fact that as community members, we can live in a community where we feel safe, I think is a great tribute to the heroes, both from the Sheriff's Department and from the Police Department. I was at the hospital this morning speaking to one of our officers that was still in the hospital. His wife was there. First Lady Maria Berry is with me. And we just thanked him for his service. And like the sheriff's deputy, his spirits were high. He felt blessed to be a police officer, was anxious to get back to work, and wanted his community to know that he's going to be fine, and that he's in good spirits, and that he loves his job. And so just as you go to bed today and have dinner with your family, please keep these officers and sheriff's deputy in your prayers, as you would all of the members of the Albuquerque Police Department and the Sheriff's Department. They're out there doing great work on our behalf, and gentlemen, please let them know that they're in our thoughts and prayers as well.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you, Mayor.
As I mentioned earlier, we are in the beginning stages. We have a lot of work to do in this investigation. We'll be more than happy to entertain questions, but please be patient with us. We have officers, their families, we have deputies. We want to make sure we get this right, and we're going to take our time and do it the right way, because we want as many questions answered as possible when it comes to why this occurred. So at this time, I'll stand for any questions.
Sheriff, can you please give us an update on your deputy? How is she doing?
Well, I think that the right thing for me to say is that she's in ICU, and it's serious, and that's probably where I need to leave it.
Can you confirm, sir, that she will unfortunately sustain some lasting effects from this, possibly losing a limb?
I think at the very, very best, she has a long, hard, tough road to recovery.
There's a lot of emotion there, and I can see it in you, Chief, as well. It's a tough day for everyone. Can you at least give us an insight on what's going through your mind right now?
It's part of the job, it's what we do. I'm proud of our department, all of our officers, deputies, and APD, and how we handled this incident. I think it could have been a lot more horrific if it hadn't have been for the courageous men and women of both our departments. I'm proud today to have, to be a law enforcement officer.
I think in the next couple of weeks, you're gonna hear stories of heroism. The officers who grabbed other officers and put them in their vehicles and drove them to the hospital. You're gonna see a sergeant who stopped, got himself out of a pursuit, and to help save a deputy. You're gonna hear officers who put their lives in when the subject is firing rounds. They didn't think twice about it. That's what we do as law enforcement officers. That's what I'm so proud of, to be standing up here in front of you today to say I'm proud of the men and women who serve in this capacity. I couldn't be more proud of our departments. I agree with Sheriff Houston. They handled themselves yesterday as professionals, and I wouldn't expect any less of them in any day. They're hurting. They're sad. They want to know why.
Chief Banks, will you let us know or elaborate on the injuries that the APD officers sustained?
Thank you for that question, and what I will tell you is all injuries were sustained to the lower extremities, but I will not elaborate any more on that until after they're interviewed. And also, just for the fact that, they're still trying to heal, they still have to make notifications to some family members as well, especially those that are out of town. So I want to give them that opportunity. I think they deserve that respect.
Are they all male?
All of them are male officers, yes, that's correct.
Chief, can you please tell us, is there any kind of indication that somebody else was in on this with this man?
Thank you, and I appreciate that question. And that's what we were trying to investigate yesterday, to see if it was just a sole individual who started this senseless act yesterday. And that's why we're making sure we're taking our time, we're looking into his background to determine what his motives were. At this point right now, it looks like it's an individual who took it upon himself to target our officers and our deputies.
I actually heard yesterday, I'm sorry, just a follow-up on that. Yesterday I heard something, someone by MLK and Broadway said that they physically saw an SUV, a burgundy SUV, and with shots being fired out of that. Is there any truth to that?
There is no truth to that, no.
Chief, can you tell me if Christopher Chase was under any current investigation or allegations that he claims weren't true?
Thank you for that question. We're investigating into his background right now to determine what actually caused him to go on his rampage yesterday. Until, it's going to take us some time. It's going to take us some time. So I don't know the answer to that question at this point.
Does he have any history with guns or gun violence? I was able to speak to a person at that residence just very briefly this morning, and he said he may have had a history with guns. Can you confirm or elaborate on that?
I couldn't tell you what his history. He was armed yesterday, and the fact that he decided to arm himself in the middle of our city and start shooting at police officers is concerning as it is. His actual history beyond this, that's what we're looking into.
Chief, was he actually armed with an AK-47, and if so, how many rounds did he have with him?
He was armed with an assault rifle, and until our investigation is complete, we will not be able to determine the amount of rounds that he did fire or any rounds that he had on his person that were not fired.
Are you calling this an ambush?
This subject called and waited for police. I call it a senseless act, a coward act is what I would call it.
It sounds like as a result of the work by these officers, no Albuquerque, just civilians were hurt. Can you confirm that?
I think we're very blessed that the injuries were primarily sustained to our law enforcement officers. It's just unfortunate that any of our law enforcement officers did get hit. But I'll tell you, we had some true heroes yesterday that probably prevented this tragedy to be worse than it actually was yesterday. And again, I'm very, very proud of the Albuquerque Police Department. I'm very proud of the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department. I thank the Bernalillo County Fire Department for taking the deputy, assisting, getting her aid, and getting to the hospital as soon as they did. With the help of our sergeant, the deputy, and the fire department, hopefully we've saved that deputy, and she will go on to have finish her career successfully.
Since there are two agencies that are involved in this, is there one in particular that's going to be taking the lead, or is there going to be an outside?
The Albuquerque Police Department is taking the lead on this incident. However, we are working in conjunction with other agencies, which I had mentioned earlier, which would be the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department, the State Police, the District Attorney's Office, and the Office of the Medical Investigator. Additionally, many of our federal agencies, our other state agencies have called us and have provided any type of resources or offered up any type of resources that we would need.
Can you also just kind of give us an idea about when each officer, at which point, when an officer was struck throughout?
I will not. The reason is because the officers have not given their testimony, and I do not want to taint their testimony. I want to give them the opportunity to speak to our investigators and give their recollection. I don't want them to hear it on TV or read it in the papers.
Can you tell us, Chief, where each person, which location?
I think that's the question that he asked, and I don't want to do that at this point. Later on, once we get the interviews done, then I'll be able to give further detail into that, and I appreciate your patience with that. I just want to make sure that our officers get a fair chance at doing their interviews. Thank you.
Chief, could you explain how important it is for anyone who might have caught it on video or even witnessed it to give you guys a call?
Thank you. That's a great question or a great statement. Anybody who did witness this, this tragic event yesterday, the Census Act, and have either video, camcorder, whatever, or does have damage to their property, whether it's their car or their building, please call 242-COPS, 242-2677. We will have an investigator reach out to you and follow up. Thank you. Any other questions?
Back in that Walter area, that neighborhood there, a couple of neighbors said they heard an explosion. Was that anything to do with how you guys were assessing the scene there and going forward with that home?
I'm not familiar with an explosion. The only thing that we normally do when we do tactical entry or something of that nature, they could use a flashbang or something of that nature, but I couldn't answer that question. I'm sorry.
Did you find anything else of note that is that?
Right now, the investigation is still ongoing. They did do a search warrant, and they're gathering all the evidence and information. So I will be briefed on that at a later time.
Was he wearing body armor?
He was wearing body armor, yes.
Was his tattoo visible from on his arm or like from a short sleeve shirt?
We are able to see his tattoo while we're on scene. And then based on his arrest record that we have, it also indicates and it marks what his tattoo says.
So you're saying you're not sure if he was shot by an officer or took his own life?
What I am saying is I'll leave it to the Office of Medical Investigator to determine the manner of death.
How many of your officers, either yours or deputies, opened fire in those last couple of seconds? How many were on him and shot?
At this point, I'd rather not answer that question until all interviews are done. Again, I don't think that would be fair if I ever give a statement. Additionally, I want to make sure that I give you the most accurate information. You can understand that scene, a multitude of officers, people running around over at the gas station. You have this subject just wrecked a police car. We want to make sure that we have the right information before we pass that along.
Is Mr. Chase from Albuquerque originally?
I don't believe he is from Albuquerque, no.
Some witnesses we spoke to yesterday saw a white truck involved in the pursuit. Was that possibly an off-duty police officer that got involved, or was there a white truck at all in this pursuit near 4th and Montano?
Near 4th and Montano? I don't know. The first I've heard of a white truck.
And Chief, can you just elaborate a little bit more about what your officers, when they first got that call, when they were going to it, what were they prepared and what did they know they were coming upon?
What they got the information based on the 911 dispatch was a male subject dressed in camouflage, possibly holding a AK-47 and wearing a black mask, saying that he was waiting on officers. Like I said, a sergeant was dispatched, officers were dispatched. The sergeant took control of that situation and was starting to direct officers and ask for additional resources. that's what we expect our sergeant to do, is start to ask for additional resources and to calm that scene and make sure that the officers are prepared to handle that situation.
So the protocol was followed?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm very proud of that sergeant and his actions throughout that entire incident.
You mentioned this was an assault rifle, but would you say what specific type of gun this was that he was using?
I will not, no, sir.
When your officers were arriving on scene initially, was there any sort of information about him in particular that might have been given to you from the real-time crime center, or did you have any other indication about who the guy might be on your scene?
No indication who he was, other than what we received from 911.
Did he live alone?
Don't know that answer.
Did you say he had family here or not?
I did not say that, either or. No, I do not know if you have family here or not. Thank you, I appreciate it.